Namaste and welcome to our continuing series on the Life Divine. We are on the chapter in Book 2, Indeterminates, Cosmic Determinations and the Indeterminable. And we are at the page number 317 on the paragraph starting with On That Hypothesis.
So, since we are doing it once a week, we are likely to lose the link of what we read last time. So, I'll read out to you the summary of what he has said in the previous para. Then we will start reading the para that we have to read today. Okay, so he has said in the previous para, he is discussing what could create this in the physical world. We see two things. We see that there is first of all a law and an order. Okay? Every species produces itself in a very, very orderly and regulated manner. A dog will produce only a dog. A cat will produce only a cat. It's never that a cat produces a dog. There's no chaos. So you see a certain order and a law. But at the same time, you see that there is an element of chance. He calls it chance. It may produce, a cat may produce 2 kittens or 3 kittens, but they are not all the same. There is a variation. So therefore there are two things. So he says, what could explain this one? So he says, let's start with some hypothesis. Let us suppose that there is a consciousness and there is a force. So that is the hypothesis that he is basing himself on, and then he will examine the thing and see whether it is valid or not. Okay? And he will raise objections himself to it. So in this one, he is saying in the previous para, an explanation can there be that there is an extra cosmic conscious mind that is creating this universe. Not seeing the creator is not a problem. You don't see the creator. As one would see the painting but not the painter. Okay? If you go into an exhibition hall, you will see the paintings, you see the world, but you don't see the painter, you don't see the author. So that's not a problem, he says. Or even if the creator were in the cosmos, not outside, he could hide himself behind his creations, much like the director of a film. These are all my ideas to make you explain the... So, a director of the film has done the whole film, but you don't see him. You see only he is hiding behind his creations. He is not outside the universe. Okay? So, first hypothesis, extra cosmic God has created the world. And if that's a problem to you, then we could even suppose that God is there in the world creating, but hiding himself. Okay? He could hide himself behind several veils, the first of which could be matter, the material which hides the creator, yet is plastic enough to be molded into any shape. Okay? Matter can be molded into any shape. It can become a tree, it can become a flower, a fruit, and an animal even, and even human beings. Matter is being molded into that. The second veil could be life, and the third could be mind. But now the question arises, but why create at all? For the joy of creation? Then why, if that is the reason that he is creating for joy, because all creation normally you see in the physical world gives joy. But if that is the fact, then why the pain and the suffering? He is creating, okay, then joy is understandable, but why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? This problem is insoluble if the creator is personal and extra cosmic. This much he has said in the previous para. Okay? You cannot solve the problem of pain and suffering in the world if you think that the creator is standing outside the universe and he is personal only. If he is a person, why is he creating pain and suffering for the creatures that he has created? So this much he has said in the previous para. Now we can read the para that we are supposed to read today. On that hypothesis, okay, he is examining the hypothesis. So what is that hypothesis? The hypothesis that consciousness has created the world and after hiding itself is working like an artisan, shaping the dumb but responsive substance of matter. That's what he's doing. This is the hypothesis that he is examining. Okay? So, on that hypothesis, there must be, behind the action of the material energy, a secret involved consciousness, cosmic, infinite, building up through the action of that frontal energy its means of an evolutionary manifestation, a creation out of itself in the boundless finite of the material universe. The apparent inconscience of the material energy would be an indispensable condition for the structure of the material world substance in which this consciousness intends to involve itself so that it may grow by evolution out of its apparent opposite. All these are the hypothesis that he is examining. Okay? For without some such device, a complete involution would be impossible. First of all, he involves himself in what he has created and then he is slowly evolving out of it. If there is such a creation by the infinite out of itself, it must be the manifestation in a material disguise of truths or powers of its own being. The forms or vehicles of these truths or powers would be the basic, general or fundamental determinates we see in nature. We'll come back to the sentences later on. The particular determinates, which otherwise are unaccountable variations that have emerged from the vague general stuff in which they originate, would be the appropriate forms or vehicles of the possibilities that the truths or powers residing in these fundamentals bore within them. The principle of free variation of possibilities natural to an infinite consciousness would be the explanation of the aspect of inconscient chance of which we are aware in the workings of nature. Inconscient only in appearance, and so appearing because of the complete involution in matter, because the veil with which the secret consciousness has disguised its presence. The principle of truths, real powers of the infinite imperatively fulfilling themselves, would be the explanation of the opposite aspect of a mechanical necessity which we see in nature, mechanical in appearance only, and so appearing because of the same veil of inconscience. It would then be perfectly intelligible why the inconscient does its works with a constant principle of mathematical architecture, of design, of effective arrangement of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends, of inexhaustible device and invention. One might almost say a constant experimental skill and an automatism of purpose. The appearance of consciousness out of an apparent inconscience would also be no longer inexplicable. So, he has examined the whole idea of the hypothesis that a consciousness which is extra-cosmic, or you can also think that it is in the cosmos, is creating the world with its force. So, we can go back to or we can do one thing, briefly see what the para is saying and then we'll go back into each sentence. We then theorize, so the hypothesis, remember, so we then theorize that a consciousness and will has created the universe but has hidden itself in it and intends to evolve out of its apparent opposite. There is a theory that he is proposing. Now we will see whether it's any objections can be raised, and then he will examine the objections also. Okay, so we then theorize that a consciousness and will is the aspect of force and consciousness is aspect of knowledge, okay, have created the universe but has hidden itself in it and intends to evolve out of its apparent opposite. What is the apparent opposite? The inconscience. Okay, so the inconscience below and the consciousness above would be understandable. So, a consciousness and a will at the highest level creating the universe and involving itself in what it has done. Okay, so it is ending in the inconscience, and out of the inconscience he has hidden himself and he is slowly evolving. This is the theory that he is going to examine. Okay, and he says that it does explain, the consciousness explains how the nature is there, as though it is there behind, guiding everything. You can see that he has discussed it in many places. There is will and there is the consciousness. Force is creating mechanically the order in the physical world. Law is fixed. Physics tells you that there are fixed laws in the physical world. So that's the aspect of the force. The force is mechanical and just creating. But consciousness is there guiding, and the element of chance, the element of variation is coming because of consciousness. So the flexibility is coming from the consciousness, and the rigidity of the laws is coming from the force. That's what he has said. Okay? So both can be explained. And he's also saying that the law that comes, it is working with mathematical architecture, okay, and effective arrangement of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends, of inexhaustible device and invention. So we'll see all this one by one. We'll give examples so that it becomes clear. We go back to the beginning of the para. On that hypothesis. So what is the hypothesis? We repeat again. The hypothesis that consciousness has created the world, and after hiding itself in what it has created, is working like an artisan, shaping the dumb but responsive substance of matter. Matter is very, very unconscious, but still it will obey what the creator is asking it to do. Like clay. Clay is also very dumb, but the potter can make anything out of it. He can make pots, he can make cups, saucers, plates, he can do whatever he wants. So that's what he's saying. Okay? So on that hypothesis, there must be, behind the action of the material energy, a secret, involved consciousness, which is cosmic, obviously, because what has been produced is a cosmos. Infinite, building up through the action of that frontal energy. We see the energy in the physical world. It's means of an evolutionary manifestation. So it is creating, it is using the frontal force to make an evolutionary manifestation. A creation out of itself in the boundless finite of the material universe. This boundless finite, he is describing the material universe as boundless finite. It's rather interesting because you can't think of a finite. The moment you think of a finite for the world, you wonder what is there beyond it. So it's a challenge to the mind. So it is actually boundless, but it is limited. The universe cannot be absolute. It is physical. If it is physical, it has to be boundless finite of the material universe. The apparent inconscience of the material energy would be an indispensable condition for the structure of the material world substance in which this consciousness intends to involve itself so that it may grow by evolution out of its apparent opposite. He is not talking here of the Leela, but the divine creates a material which is capable of hiding him. And if it is capable of hiding him, he is full consciousness. Therefore, the material which will hide him has to be the opposite. It has to be the inconscience. So that's why I say you have to start with the idea of inconscience. Okay? Because he has to hide himself in it. And why is he hiding himself in it? Because he is evolving slowly out of it. Okay? Out of his apparent opposite. For without some such device, a complete involution would be impossible. Exactly. How can it involve itself in something which is already conscious? Then it won't hide itself. But when it is hiding itself, you have to have complete inconscience. The hiding must be real. If there is such a creation by the infinite out of itself, it must be the manifestation in a material disguise of truths or powers of its own being. what is created is part of itself. That's what he's saying. Just like an artist makes a painting, but the painting is only an expression of what is inside him. Okay? Or a poet makes a poem, and the poem is already latent in him, he is only bringing it out. Okay? That's what he's saying. So whatever he is producing in the universe is a manifestation of his own being. Whatever is the possibilities in him, he is manifesting them. So, if there is such a creation by the infinite out of itself, it must be a manifestation in a material disguise of truths or powers of its own being. The forms or vehicles of these truths or powers would be the basic, general or fundamental determinates we see in nature. Now what is this fundamental determinates in nature? So the fundamental determinates of nature in nature are the substance that he is producing, because that is the starting point for making everything. So the fundamentally, the determinants of nature are different, okay, but the fundamental determinants are ether, air, fire, water, earth. Or if you want to use Vedic language, it is the 7 planes of consciousness. These are the fundamentals. They are fundamental determinants. But that determinate will produce other determinants. That's what the fundamental.
Ether, fire, air, water, that is a 5, but those are 7. So how do we account?
So that is the way you divide the thing. It depends entirely. It's a question of dividing, how you want to divide. From the superconscious to the inconscious, there is a gradation of light from the highest to the lowest. And it's a continuous existence and a continuous extension. There are no limits. So you can divide as you want. It's a question of how you want to divide. You can divide it to 3, as many philosophies do. Gross world, subtle world, causal world. You can divide into 5, like most philosophical systems do. Ether, air, fire, water, earth. But Sri Aurobindo says, I will follow the Vedic pattern. And the Vedic pattern is 7. And what are those 7 in the Vedic pattern? Sat, Chit, Ananda, Supermind, mind, life, body. This is his way of saying. Okay? But Mother says you can divide into 12. You can divide into, in fact, Sri Aurobindo himself says that you can divide into infinite number, because every time you rise one level, the laws and the characteristics of that plane change. He says there is no limit to it. So, now he is talking of the fundamental determinants in nature. You can also think of it in another way. The fundamental determinants of nature are, for instance, he has given himself an example earlier. Say, take oxygen and hydrogen. Okay? It's a determinant. You can say that oxygen has got these properties, hydrogen has got these properties. But when they combine, they create another determinant which is even more, that's water. Okay? A particular determinant is water, ice and water vapor if you want. Okay? So, we may call oxygen and hydrogen general determinants. I'll come to that, the summary later on. We'll see that later on. Okay, so fundamental determinants we see in nature. The particular determinants, okay, we have to, so fundamental determinants, as I said, at a physical level if you take, okay, you take all the elements, they are pure, gold, silver, oxygen, hydrogen, they are all very, very clear characteristics they have. So they are the fundamental determinants. What are the particular determinants? Whatever they again produce. The gold is the fundamental determinant, and it produces gold rings, earrings, necklace, armlets, bracelets, all these things it can produce. They are the particular determinants, which otherwise are unaccountable variations that have emerged from the vague general stuff in which they originate, would be the appropriate forms or vehicles of the possibilities that the truths or powers residing in these fundamentals bore within them. So, what he's saying is, gold can mold itself into an armlet, a bracelet, an anklet, a nose ring, and an earring, and a necklace. So it has got the capacity to do that. Okay? So that's why it's called the fundamental determinate, and the particular determinates are the forms that we see in the physical world, which otherwise are unaccountable variations that have emerged from the vague general stuff of which they originate, would be the appropriate forms or vehicles of the possibilities that the truths or powers residing in these fundamentals bore within them. The principle of free variation, I told you, a cat will produce 3 kittens, but each one will be different. Okay, they'll have different colors, different sizes, different even nature. The principle of free variation of possibilities natural to an infinite consciousness would be the explanation of the aspect of inconscient chance. Okay? Chance, of which we are aware in the workings of nature. You see that. There is a lot of variation. In the plant world, in the animal world, you see these variations. Okay? There is a law, and the law is that a cat will produce only a cat. But the cat is producing different types of cats. So that's a variation, free variation. There is both. There is a fixity and law, and there is also a chance. So the principle of free variation of possibility natural to an infinite consciousness would be the explanation of the aspect of inconscient chance, of which we are aware in the workings of nature. Inconscient only in appearance, and so appearing because of the complete involution in matter, because of the veil with which the secret consciousness has disguised its presence. It seems to be inconscient, but actually it is not inconscient. There is a consciousness hiding in it. Okay. Now we come to the next sentence. We'll give examples of that so that we understand what he's saying. Okay. So, the principle of truths, real powers of the infinite, imperatively fulfilling themselves, would be the explanation of the opposite aspect of a mechanical necessity which we see in nature. Okay? What he's saying here is the principle of truths, real powers of the infinite, imperatively fulfilling themselves, would be the explanation of an opposite aspect of a mechanical necessity in which we see in nature. There is a fixity and a law that operates. Okay? Again, I come back to the idea of the cat producing only a cat. Necessarily, it has to produce only a cat. It can't produce anything else. So, this is the mechanical necessity which we see in nature. Mechanical in appearance only, and so appearing because of the same veil of inconscience. Okay? It would then be perfectly intelligible why the inconscient does its works with a constant principle of mathematical architecture, of design, of effective arrangement of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends, of inexhaustible device and invention. One might almost say a constant experimental skill and an automatism of purpose. So, when we examine the nature, we see that all these principles are there. Okay. First of all, mathematical architecture. Okay. Can we give some examples of that? For instance, this sequence of numbers.
Yeah.
Nah?
Mathematical architecture, like there is this number 108, and if we like Google Earth, Moon, Sun, and just simply 108, then I don't exactly remember, but the distance between the Earth and the Sun is 108 times the diameter of the Earth. And same is for Moon, something like that.
So
but
mathematical
yeah,
structure.
there are 3 or 4 like this for 108.
I'll give you 2 examples of mathematical structures. Okay, let's see the geometric progression of numbers. Okay, 1, 2 multiplied by 2 becomes 4. 4 multiplied by 4 becomes 8. 8 multiplied by 8. This is a geometric progression to the square. 4 square, 8 square. So, where do you find this? You find this in the cell reproducing itself. It goes by leaps and bounds, it goes on. One produces 2, now each one again produces 2 more, so it goes to 4, and again these produce 2 more, so it goes to... So geometric progression, very clearly you can see there. Then there is the normal procedure of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. That also you can see, very, very slowly things are moving. Now there is another one, the Fibonacci series, where if you take a shell, a seashell, and the spiral there, that is the principle it follows. And what is that? 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. So this is the series that it follows. So that's what Madhusudhan is saying. He is not giving examples, but very clearly, mathematical architecture of design, of effective arrangement of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends. Now, that's interesting. We'll give examples of adaptation of means to ends. Okay, so take the trees. Okay, they need water and they need air. Okay, so if there is too much water, there'll be problems. If there is no water, there'll be problems. But nature adjusts itself. Adapting itself means, so you can find, even where there is no water in the deserts, you find cactuses. So nature has adapted herself to lack of water. And if there is too much water, she adapts herself into mangroves. Okay? So this is what he's saying, adaptation of means to ends. We also see that certain animals, when they have to eat certain type of things, they produce the necessary instrumentations. To look at the birds, okay, they have to catch prey, and so they need the right instruments. So they get a beak, and what is the beak? It is nothing but lips which have become hardened and sharp, and our nails become for the bird claws. Okay, and a horse has to run fast. So what does it become? The nails become hooves. So this is the adaptation of means to ends. That's what he's talking about. Nature is going on adjusting. Oh, these conditions are there. Okay, I'll produce the right thing to deal with the conditions. Okay, I'll give you other examples also. So, a tree needs water. So the roots that go down, they start seeking water. The tip of the root becomes hydrophilic. It wants water. So it goes into, I give a very interesting example, which is there surprising. In the press, we had a underground water tank, and it was concrete. And the tree that was there very near, it sent out its roots, and it pierced the concrete wall and covered the whole with fine roots structures. So there seems to be a consciousness there in it. It knows that there is water there and it's going there. That's what it's meaning. Okay. So
even for the Fibonacci series, so the galaxy plan of Auroville, that galaxy plan follows the same Fibonacci sequence.
This is a spiral. That's why it's a spiral.
Yes.
The spiral is that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So it's interesting what he's saying. Okay. Then also you can think of the effective arrangement of, also take instinctive animals. The instinctive animals is nature is adjusting herself to the necessities of the environment. How does a bird know that it has to fly 5,000 miles down south from the cold winter that is coming? Instinct. So adapting of means to ends. Okay. So that's what he's saying. Okay, another thing. A bear has to go and live in the North Pole. So what is it? It develops a tremendous layer of thick, under the skin, there's 4 or 5 inches of fat which isolates it from that. Then also, it becomes white. There are bears with black, which attract light and heat, and white, it rejects heat. So this is the adaptation that we're talking about, okay? So, inexhaustible device and invention. Inexhaustible device and invention, you can think of the leaves of trees, okay? From the tiniest of leaves to the vast, huge leaves, the banana plant, okay? That's a leaf. And you see other leaves also small, tiny leaves. And then the shapes and the sizes. It is surprising when you see the amount of variation that can be there. So, this is what he's saying. Mechanical necessity. So, perfectly intelligible why the inconscient does its works is a constant principle of mathematical architecture, of design, of effective management of numbers, of adaptation of means to ends. Also, you can also think of the earth. No? The earth has got 3 movements. One is it is going round the sun. That's the first movement. The second movement it is revolving on itself. Okay? So you get day and night. And why is day and night necessary? Because you need to rest. Energy is not infinite. So at night there is rest and daytime there is activity. Then it has to produce seasons. So what it does? It rotates on its own axis. This is the third movement. So you can see how the consciousness that is there has thought of every possibility and provides for that in the physical world. So you can see a consciousness hiding behind the forms and guiding it. That's why he says, apparently inconscient, but not really inconscient. It is hiding and governing everything. To put it in other words, Mr. Hindu says that the transcendent creates the cosmos and also the individual, and he has got 3 processes of creation. The first process, you plan the creation. Okay? Then you execute the creation and then you govern it. So, you plan the creation, then you create it and then you govern it. So, transcendent, cosmic and individual. So, in each individual, the divine is there guiding it, governing it. So that's why there is so much of order and logic in whatever is being produced. Okay? So, the adaptation of means to ends, of inexhaustible device and invention. Okay? One might almost say a constant experimental skill and an automatism of purpose. The appearance of consciousness out of an apparent inconscience would also be no longer inexplicable, because in the inconscience, consciousness is there. Therefore, it is very understandable why it happens, how it happens. So, you can think of the infinite variation also. You can take, it's very interesting, we don't think about it. But what are the means of locomotion, for instance? Okay? Man walks on 2 legs. Okay? An animal moves on locomotion, moves on 4. The centipede has 100 legs. Interesting. Now, the snake has no legs at all. So what does it do? These legs become muscles and they go in, and with contraction and expansion, the snake moves. Okay? Then go into the air, motion with wings. So nature gives wings to birds too for motion. What about fish? It has got flexibility in the whole body, and its tail is actually the means of locomotion. So even here you can see how nature is adapting itself to so many different types. Whatever is to be done, it manages to do it. Okay. So this is the what Semde is saying here. So much of variation, so much of experimental skill. Semde is using the word experimental skill. Na? So even if you see, the other day we were watching a video of seals. They don't have legs, they don't have anything. But the whole body moves like that and they can go quite fast. Okay, so it's nature adapts herself to the different circumstances. So the appearance of consciousness out of an apparent inconscience would be no longer inexplicable. So we have read the whole para. Now he is explaining now the hypothesis that he started with seems to explain everything that you see in nature. Okay? Then, is there something with the theory that can be objected to? That's what he's going to examine now. Okay? So, let's see what he's saying. All the unexplained processes of nature would find their meaning and their place if this hypothesis proved to be tenable. So, I have started with the hypothesis, and if it is tenable, if it can be understood, then so many things that you see in nature the chance element and the order and law and fixity of nature that is there, both would be explained, if my hypothesis is right. Energy seems to create substance, but in reality, as existence is inherent in consciousness force, so also substance would be inherent in energy. The energy, a manifestation of the force, substance, a manifestation of the secret existence. We'll come back to it. But as it is a spiritual substance, it would not be apprehended by the material sense until it is given by energy the forms of matter, seizable by that sense. One begins to understand also how arrangement of design, quantity, and number can be a base for the manifestation of quality and property. For design, quantity, and number are powers of existence, substance. Quality and property are powers of the consciousness and its force that reside in the existence. They can then be made manifest and operative by a rhythm and process of substance. The growth of the tree out of the seed would be accounted for, like all other similar phenomena, by the indwelling presence of what we have called the real idea. Infinite self-perception of the significant form, the living body of its power of existence that has to emerge from its own self-compression in energy substance, would be carried internally in the form of the seed, carried in the occult consciousness involved in that form, and would naturally evolve out of it. There would be no difficulty either in understanding on this principle how infinitesimals of a material character like the gene and the chromosome can carry in them psychological elements to be transmitted to a physical form that has to emerge from the human seed. It would be at bottom on the same principle in the objectivity of matter as that which we find in our subjective experience. For we see that the subconscious physical carries in it a mental psychological content, impressions of past events, habits, fixed mental and vital formations, fixed forms of character, and sends them up by an occult process to the waking consciousness, thus originating or influencing many activities of our nature. Also very, very interesting, and we have to look carefully into what he is saying. But there is an involvement of also. He is continuing to examine the theory that he is making. Actually, he is talking because he has to convince those who are not familiar with the spiritual experiences. But when you get spiritual experience, you know that the physical world is being made by Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. So he is talking in a logical manner, but his theory that he is doing is actually can be experienced in spiritual planes of consciousness. So I'll do one thing. I'll read out the summary. Okay, then we'll do the...
Next time we can do the explanation of this paragraph.
Next time.
We can go line by line.
That's right. I think so. So, I start. Sat is a substance that lends itself to be shaped and hammered into form, color and size. Sat is a substance that lends itself to be shaped, hammered into form, color and size. Consciousness force creates forms and shapes. Note that Sat is involved in Chit Shakti and Chit Shakti is present in Sat. They are all one. Okay? Matter is consciousness and consciousness is substance. Now this is something that we have to understand very clearly. There are many people who don't understand consciousness. So consciousness is not something vague and it is a substance. It is itself. Sremda speaks all through in his writings of substance. The substance must become pure. The substance must become conscious. Okay? So this is what he's saying. But there is a difference between substance of matter and substance of Sat. The substance of Sat is absolutely subtle, and therefore it can take any form it wants.
In one of his volumes, he gives the example to explain the apara prakriti and the para prakriti, means the higher and lower nature. He says it's as if this ocean of material energy is surrounded by another ocean of spiritual energy.
That's right.
And basically, it is that ocean of spiritual energy which becomes this ocean of material energy gradually.
That's right. Again, the idea of gradation. Okay, so note that Sat is involved in Chit Shakti. Okay, and Chit Shakti is present in Sat. Matter is consciousness, and consciousness is substance. Okay, so next time we'll go into each sentence.
Also, what I found interesting in this one sentence, that these words quality and quantity are very...
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Okay, we'll just give examples of that. Okay, so take oxygen. What is it actually? It is an atom where there is a nucleus and there are electrons moving around it. Okay, and the number of electrons that come are determining the material that it is. In oxygen, you have how many electrons? 8. Exactly. That's what I thought. 8. In hydrogen?
1.
Only 1. But it becomes a totally different thing. What about uranium? You have got 248 perhaps, or something like that.
Yes,
okay?
238.
Take gold. Okay? It has got a fixed number. So number is determining quality. This is what he's saying. It's very... Also, you can also think of light. Okay? The light, the vibrational frequency of a particular light, if you change that frequency, okay, the number you change, it becomes red becomes blue, blue becomes white, not white, but because not a color. Violet, green, yellow, it becomes by changing number. So how does this happen? This is a mystery. We really can't explain that. So that's what it means by number. Okay, so we'll go into detail next time and we'll see what he's saying. And also it's interesting that the involved in this whole thing is that the infinite contains the finite, all the finites, and each finite contains also the infinite. This is something that we have to understand, and that we see in the physical world. Okay, the whole body, you go to the cell, and in the cell, each cell, you have chromosomes. And the chromosomes are a blueprint of whatever, all the things that are there to be determined. The color of your skin, the color of your eyes, your height, your the length of your fingers, everything is there, stored in memory in the chromosomes. So, this is the infinite. This is, I like to always quote from William Blake's lines, okay, that the infinite is there in the finite and the finite is there in the infinite. In fact, even the infinitesimal, okay. So, those lines go like that. He says, to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. So, they are all involved in each other. The transcendent involves itself in the cosmos involves itself in the individual. They are all linked together, each one is there. In the superconscient, all the possibilities of the universe are there. In the individual, all the possibilities of going back to the divine consciousness is there. So it's all involved in each other. There is a basic unity of the universe, which he goes on saying. We don't see the unity here, we see only multiplicity. But as you keep rising in consciousness, the unity aspect reveals itself. Okay?
One of his aphorisms, Sri Aurobindo, begins with these 4 words, there is nothing finite. And then he, after semicolon, there is something more.
Yes.
But it's a categorical statement in itself. There is nothing finite. There is nothing
Everything is infinite.
There is nothing finite, exactly.
Exactly. Okay?